Sleeping Beauty. Once upon a time, long, long ago, there lived a king and queen who loved each other very much. For many years they wished for a child, and one day their wish was granted. The queen gave birth to a beautiful baby daughter. The king was so happy that he decided to give a magnificent banquet, and he sat down immediately to make out his guest list. He wanted to invite all the fairies of the kingdom to be his guests of honor. But as there were 13 of them, and only 12 gold plates, one of the fairies had to be left off the list. At the feast, each fairy gave the baby princess one special gift. One woman gave her virtue. Another gave her beauty. A third gave her wealth, and so on. Just as the 11th fairy was bestowing her gift, there was a terrible clamor in the hallway. The doors burst open, and the uninvited 13th fairy came rushing in. Angry with the king, she pointed a trembling finger at the baby and cried, "In the 15th year of her life, the Princess Rosamond shall prick herself with a spindle, and she shall fall down dead." And with that, she left the great hall just as suddenly as she had come into it. Everyone was stunned by the terrible curse. The first person to move was the 12th fairy, who had not yet bestowed her gift. Though she could not completely change the evil curse, she did have the power to soften it. So she said, "When she is 15 years old, the Princess Rosamond shall not die, but will fall into a deep sleep for 100 years. The king and queen, grieving at the thought of such a fate for their beautiful baby, ordered that all the spindles in their kingdom be destroyed. And so the little princess grew up, with all the gifts the good fairies had given her. She was modest and lovely and gentle and clever, and she was loved by all the people in the kingdom. One day, when she was 15 years old, the princess happened to be wandering alone in the castle. Going along a secret passageway, she suddenly came to a little door she had never seen before. Opening the door, the princess discovered a winding staircase leading to the top of an old tower. The princess ran up the stairs and found another little door at the top. Opening it, she saw a little room in which an old woman sat with a spindle, busily spinning flax. "Good day, dear lady," the princess said. "What are you doing?" "I am spinning," the old woman answered. "What is this that turns so quickly?" the princess asked. And with that, she reached out and took the spindle in her hand. No sooner had she grasped the spindle than she pricked her finger and immediately fell into a deep, deep sleep. And because the 12th fairy had softened the curse, all the things the princess loved most fell asleep at the same time. The king and queen fell asleep in the great hall, and the servants fell asleep all over the castle. The grooms and the horses fell asleep in the stable, and the dogs and cats fell asleep in the courtyard. And on the castle walls, the birds fell asleep right next to the guards. And in the castle moat, the fish fell asleep. And in the kitchen, the fires went out, and the soup stopped cooking. Everything grew very, very quiet. During the next 100 years, a great hedge of thorns grew up around the castle. The hedge grew so high that finally the whole castle was hidden away as though in its own private, quiet world. Once or twice during the long years, a prince would come from another kingdom and try to get through the hedge of thorns to see for himself what the sleeping princess looked like. But the thorns never let anyone pass, and so no one could get into the castle. When the 100 years were almost over, a handsome young prince came riding into the kingdom. And as he rode through the woods near the castle, the thorn hedge turned, like magic, into a hedge of beautiful flowers, with a lovely opening just large enough for the prince and his horse. The prince rode into the courtyard and looked around in wonder, for everything and everyone was asleep. Then he went into the castle and through the secret little door and up the winding staircase and into the room where the princess was sleeping. And when he saw the prince fell deeply in love with her. He knelt by the bed and tenderly kissed the lovely sleeping girl. At that moment, the princess stirred and opened her eyes. As she looked into the gentle eyes of the kneeling prince, the princess too fell in love. The princess and the prince went down the stairs of the old tower together. As they walked through the winding corridors, they saw that the servants were waking up, and in the great hall the king and queen were stretching and yawning. And in the kitchen the fires were burning brightly again, and the soup was beginning to cook. And in the yard the dogs and cats were barking and calling, and in the stable the horses were neighing, and overhead the birds were flying merrily back and forth, making beautiful pictures in the sky. And that very night a great wedding banquet was held in the castle, and the prince and princess lived happily together and ruled the kingdom wisely all the rest of their lives.